Hello, everybody. I'm just coming out of the police station here. It's one of the main police stations in Ukraine, in Kiev, in the city of Kiev. And, last Tuesday, when we were here, last week Tuesday, they arrested 3 members of our church in a fraud allegation that is involving me in the church. Is this so ridiculous? Because I came to this country when I was 19 years old, and I've given my life to the Ukrainian people and to the cause of Christ in this land.
Once upon a time, a young man rose from Nigeria, a boy abandoned by his parents but anointed by God. He shook Europe. He built one of the largest churches the world had ever seen. He trained millionaires. He fed the poor. He spoke in parliaments. Even presidents listened when he spoke. Although he was Nigerian, but the world called him the face of Kiev, the pride of Ukraine. He was unstoppable. Until tragedy came knocking.
Why is it that I refuse to go to the church of that Enenshe?
Okay.
I told him, you are not ready. Before I go to your church, I want you to listen to 200 of my messages. I will not go to your church, and your church needs to be ready and prepared. If I come, I will scatter the whole place, and I don't want to do it so that you people will not say I'm coming to destroy. He used to call me here every week. That Paul, he calls me here on my phone every week until I to remove it. Pray for me, man of God. He's a good man, but if he will not go through the process and the discipline of training himself, submitting himself to learn. But he cannot, because his allegiance is to Oyedepo. Yeah. He doesn't want to get him offended. He's, the same thing with many others like Samadeh, all of them. They want to say, okay, Pastor, we are learning from you. We want to learn. We want to do this. But they are afraid of what their daddies will say, because the culture is such that you have to be subservient. Let me talk about Pastor Adeboye. Pastor Adeboye, you gather your pastors and you told them that they are supposed to pray and fast. You all prayed and fast that God will remove us from the stage, myself and Daddy Freeze. What happened after your fasting? 40 days is over right now. Long time. We are still here. Your God didn't answer. Fire didn't come down to consume us. We didn't die. I'm not dead. You said we are going to go mad? Well, you might think I'm mad right now, but I know I'm not mad. The whole world knows I'm not mad. That the freeze is not mad. All the people who are watching us are not mad. Why is it that you have to resolve, Pastor Adeboye, to telling your people and all your churches all over the world not to listen to Sunday Adelaja? You have to put them in the bondage of slavery, not to listen to Sunday Adelaja and Daddy Freeze. Because you know the truth, that if they listen, the truth shall set them free. Almost all the so-called famous Pentecostal pastors in Africa today, most of them are involved in manipulation and brainwashing of their people. We are going to start again so that you will know what it is to be brainwashed and to have Stockholm Syndrome. Let's see it again. I'm going to be stopping it and explaining to you every step of the way.
You can see it. Thank you. Did you see that? Did you see it?
So, now the question that I'm having is, how low will these African pastors go to just deceive people and prove to them that they are powerful? How low will they go? These people keep on going lower and lower to prove the point that they are anointed. So when I say all these people are magicians and they are just, they are just brainwashed. They are just, they are not precious. These people are not men of God. They are just con artists on the pulpit that are just mesmerizing people's mind. And this is not only the only guy. Almost all those the so-called famous Pentecostal pastors in Africa today, most of them are involved in manipulation and brainwashing of their people.
Ukraine was one of the beautiful cities where God was doing amazing works for the gospel. And there was a minister of the gospel there that the Lord was using mightily. He was pastoring about the largest church in Europe. I'd spoken with him on the phone once, somewhere in 2001, around that period. But just in the last few years, I started hearing that he left his ministry to set up a new ministry on Pastor Chris. And all he could think about was every evil thing he could say about Pastor Chris. When I heard about it, I said, Lord, what's the matter with him? What is he doing? How could he leave aside this beautiful ministry that you gave him and center on Pastor Chris? Incidentally, everything he was saying about Pastor Chris was a lie. I said, why would a man of God allow lies to be planted into his mouth? The Lord said, leave him alone. He has corrupted his way. And I became very concerned because I knew that spelled trouble. Because here is a whole nation that God put before him to stay focused. And he will lose his focus. Had he stayed on the truth and in direction of the Spirit, this war would have not happened.
I was in my house, and military bases around my house. We live just about 10 minutes away from military bases. From 5 o'clock, from the very first bomb, we woke up. So my house and around us, everybody living around Kyiv, you were woken up by the blast and the explosions and the sounds that started the very same minute. They started 6 o'clock, in the morning on Wednesday. There's nobody who can forget that. If it had just been an ordinary person, I would have remained. I have to live for my wife because of the personality, because of my profile. But my whole life endeavor, my whole life achievement, my whole work, that everything that I've built all these years, building the largest church in the country. Not just members, I left all my members behind. The church building that is costing millions. Many church buildings. My own house that is also, all by clothes. Everything. My wife, she didn't even take, maybe only took toothpaste and she didn't, we couldn't take anything. You just leave your whole life behind. No, it's worse than anything you could imagine, and you will not wish your enemy.
Dr. Sunday Adelaja was born on May 28, 1967 in a small town called Ijebu-Ode, Nigeria. Life wasn't easy for him at the start. His parents left when he was still a baby, so he was raised by his grandmother, a poor but loving woman who did her best to take care of him. She shaped much of who he became. Sadly, when he was just 15 years, she passed away. Still, he never forgot how much his grandmother had invested in him, and he made up his mind to succeed in life. Later, he gave his life to Christ and won a scholarship to study journalism in the former Soviet Union at the Belarusian State University He studied hard and often prayed secretly with other Christian students. During that season of prayer and fasting, he began to sense God calling him to start a church in Kiev. It was also at this season he began hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit clearly. After finishing his studies in 1993, he moved to Ukraine. A few months later, in February 1994, he started his ministry. The ministry was named the Embassy of the Blessed Kingdom of God for All Nations. When Dr. Sunday Adelaja started the church in Kiev, it was just him and a few committed people. Every single day they prayed and then walked the streets, talking to strangers about Jesus and inviting them to church. It wasn't easy, but their fire could not be stopped. That same year in 1994, Dr. Sunday got married to his beloved wife. Together they poured their hearts into the work, and slowly the small group began to grow. Interestingly, by the end of the first year, there were already about 700 people in the church. Then God gave him a fresh strategy, a bold one, to reach out to those everyone else had forgotten in the society. The addicts, the homeless, the broken, everyone who was seen as a non-entity in the city of Kiev, Ukraine. And when he obeyed, the results were unbelievable. Within 2 years, the church had grown to 2,000 members. By the third year, over 3,000 people were attending services every week. But as the light grew brighter, so did the opposition. By 1997, his influence in Ukraine had become impossible to ignore. Newspapers began to publish false reports. Headlines attacked both the church and Pastor Sunday. There were lies, court cases, and endless criticism. Yet, in the middle of all that fire, the church kept growing. Even influential and respected people began to join. Then came one of the darkest moments. Dr. Sunday Adelaja was suddenly accused of being an illegal resident in Kiev, Ukraine. The government banned him from preaching. Police and secret agents began showing up at his services. They gave him just 2 weeks to leave the country, but he refused. Then something miraculous happened. A church member who was also a parliamentarian stood up for him. This influential member gathered 60 signatures in the parliament, blocking the campaign against Dr. Sunday, hence allowing him to stay in Ukraine. But years later, something even greater happened. Dr. Miles Monroe visited the church, and that visit marked a new wave of breakthrough. The church exploded in growth once again, and in the year 2000, after years of courtroom battles, the long lawsuit against Dr. Sunday and the church finally ended, and they won. The media propaganda stopped and peace returned. By the end of that same year, the church had grown to over 15,000 members, a living testimony of what God can do when one man refuses to give up. After years of work, Pastor Sunday's impact began to multiply drastically. In his church, many who once struggled to find jobs were now being empowered to start their own businesses. He created something called the Reformation Business Academy, where professionals held seminars teaching people how to do honest businesses using biblical principles. From that vision, many successful men and women were raised, business owners, millionaires, and leaders who carried the same fire to transform society.
Hello, dear church. I am 22 years old. A year ago, I was a student with about $500 or $600 debt. I lived on 6 or 7 hryvnias a day, and now my passive income is over $20,000 per month, and this is just my passive income. How much money did you make last month? Last month, I earned more than $70,000. 22 years old. What is the general cost of all of your projects from this 1 year? Our projects are worth about $90 million for only half a year. $50 million. For how long? How long? Less than 1 year I have come to this level. This man came to the club with debt, and in less than a year he has projects with $50 million.
As the church grew, so did his influence. Business people from the church began sponsoring a charity that fed more than 1,500 homeless and needy people every single day. He taught his members not to just receive, but to give and lift others up. And he did not stop there. God made him understand that true leadership multiplies. So he raised leaders who would raise other leaders. And this led to further growth of his ministry. In the early days, the church also had an outreach arm called the Love Rehabilitation Center. Every once in a while, they held marches across the city of Ukraine against AIDS. Through that outreach arm, more than 3,500 alcoholics were completely transformed and restored to normal life. His work began touching every part of society, especially the youths. The church created powerful programs to heal families, reduce abortions, and fight the spread of HIV/AIDS. They helped men rediscover their place as fathers through their annual men's conference and prepared young people for a good life ahead and a strong marriage. Soon his teachings were being broadcast on top TV stations, reaching over 2 million people globally. In the city of Kyiv alone, his church had 34 branches, holding services every Sunday. Across Ukraine and beyond, his church had spread to over 300 cities and even to more than 100 countries, including India, Canada, South Africa, the USA, the UAE, Israel, and many more. But yet again, as the influence of the church grew, so came more opposition. Critics accused him of being a foreign-funded manipulator who brainwashed his followers. Some claimed that the church's miracles and prayer style were proof of a cult. Others went as far as spreading lies, saying he was laundering money for Nigerian drug barons. But even though he had enemies in high places, he also had friends in powerful places. He had many influential people in his church. He had members of the Ukraine's parliament in his church. He was favored enough to have the goodwill of many high influential individuals. Men and women who boldly lived out their faith and shaped laws using Christian principles in Ukraine. His mission in ministry was clear: to bring 5 million people to Jesus in Ukraine alone. And before long, Pastor Sunday wasn't just a preacher anymore. He became a global voice. He spoke at the United Nations, the Israeli Parliament, the Japanese Parliament, and even at the US Senate. Incredible, right? Major newspapers like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal wrote about him. He received great honors, including the William J. Seymour Award and the Benson Idahosa Prize. People began calling him the face of Kyiv, the pride of Ukraine. For many, Dr. Sunday wasn't just a pastor, he was a movement, a force, a man who proved that one voice, fully yielded to God, could change a nation. But then, things began to happen, things that were not so pleasing. It is said that every rise attracts storms, and for Dr. Sunday Adelaja, his storm was heavy. In 2009, his name became tied to a major financial scandal. A company called King's Capital, which he had openly supported, suddenly collapsed. Many members of his church had invested their life savings, trusting his word, believing the promise of great returns, but the scheme failed and millions were lost. The Ukrainian authorities accused Pastor Sunday of being connected to it. Reports said members lost nearly $100 million. However, he denied all involvement, calling it persecution. But from that moment, the pressure never stopped. He faced 22 court cases, police surveillance, and preaching restrictions. Even when the cases eventually faded away, the damage had already been done. But that was not the end. Years later, another storm hit, one that shook the very foundation of his ministry. There were shocking allegations of adultery and sexual misconduct. Internal church leaders in his church accused him of having inappropriate relationships with several women within the church. This issue exploded publicly, but Dr. Sunday Adelaja denied it all. He said it was all a plot to remove him from leadership. But the damage was deep. Many of the leaders in his church resigned. members left, his name was stained everywhere on blogs, news sites, and gossip channels. Still, he refused to quit. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, another kind of fire began to burn. This time, one he started himself. As time went on, Dr. Sunday became known for his bold public attacks against well-known Nigerian church leaders, men he called the GOs, the General Overseers. He accused them of preaching prosperity instead of purpose. He accused them of turning the gospel into a business and of making their members mentally lazy. He said the Nigerian church had become rich in money but poor in impact. According to him, pastors were building empires and not nations. At first, people thought it was just open debate, but then his tone grew sharper. He publicly challenged Pastor E.A. Adeboye, saying his teaching on tithing was wrong. When Pastor E.A. Adeboye warned that non-tithers might not enter heaven, Dr. Sunday replied openly online, calling it deception. He also clashed with Bishop David Oyedepo, questioning his teachings about wealth and Job's suffering. Then he went on to criticize Reverend Chris Oyakhilome, claiming his style of ministry misleads people. And soon his name began to sound more like a threat than a teacher. The same Nigerian pastors who once welcomed him, even those who once invited him to preach, began to distance themselves. In life, there is always a backlash for anyone who dares walk on certain paths. For Dr. Sunday Adelaja, the backlash was deep, and it lasted for years. He faced fire from every direction, from the government, from fellow ministers, and from the very people who once celebrated him. After the King's Capital scandal, Ukrainian authorities came hard on him. He was placed under criminal investigation for alleged fraud and for organizing a criminal group. The investigation dragged on for years, involving multiple co-defendants and countless hearings. During that time, the government also placed a travel ban on him. He could not leave Ukraine to preach abroad or attend conferences. The same man who once spoke in the US Senate now could not even step beyond Ukraine's borders. Then came rejection from the church community. Inside his own church, things began to crumble. The adultery scandal led to an internal earthquake in his church. Senior leaders resigned. Influential bishops in his church stepped down. Members left in droves. The one thriving church in Kyiv began to lose its glow. It did not stop there. The Spiritual Council of the Russian Union of Christian Evangelical Faith even released a public statement. It was so bad. From being seen as a reformer, he was now being painted as unstable. Back home in Nigeria, things weren't any better. Many pastors who once praised him as a hero now saw him as a troublemaker. His open criticism of Nigeria's church system turned the admiration into anger. Although he later said he decided to risk all his reputation and lose his name just for the sake of truth. But that decision came with a cost. His online presence became a battlefield, endless debates, videos, accusations and counter-accusations. It was just chaos everywhere. His followers, of course, defended him passionately, while critics mocked him publicly. It was chaos, digital warfare between love and hate. Then came another storm, one he could not control. That is, the war in Ukraine. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, everything changed. Half of his church members fled the country. The once mighty Embassy of God grew silent. He lost almost everything, including his $4 million home and what he called his 40 years of investment in Europe. But even in that dark hour, he said it was God's signal to return to Africa, to start again. Nevertheless, the pain was heavy, and to make matters worse, most of the Nigerian pastors he had attacked were all silent. Later, Reverend Chris Oyakhilome publicly linked the war in Ukraine to Dr. Sunday Adelaja's habit of criticizing men of God, saying it was punishment for touching the anointed.
Had he stayed on the truth and in direction of the Spirit, this war would have not happened. But he didn't know what God gave him.
Dr. Sunday Adelaja literally became a stranger in the eyes of many. A man whose voice once shook nations, now echoing through controversy, misunderstanding, and silence. We must understand that there is something deeply spiritual and deeply painful about the loss of influence and relevance of a man who once carried fire for God. It's been said that touch not my anointed and do my prophet no harm was proven true in his own life. Reverend Chris once remarked that anyone who abandons the assignments of the Great Commission to become a referee in the body of Christ always lives to regret it. Sadly, that truth became his reality. At some point, the know-it-all mentality began to creep in, quietly, softly, and before long, it opened the door to something even darker. He looked at the great voices of Nigeria and felt they were misleading the nation. He believed that he had been sent to correct them, to school the nation. But in that moment, the hedge was broken, and what followed were scandals, chaos, and pain. Indeed, he that thinks he stands should take heed lest he fall. Because even the strong can crumble when correction becomes condemnation. His story is more than a tragedy. It is a warning that no matter how high we rise, anyone at the top can come down.